This past week, the Progressive Conservative Caucus, municipalities around the province and private industry raised concerns about this NDP government considering retroactive legislation to nullify the PPA contracts. Contracts that have been a benefit for Albertans for over 15 years. With all due respect, Premier, you need to stop dodging questions on this issue. You spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of public money trying to convince the court of public opinion, and then you've hired NDP outsiders who are anti-Alberta to fight Albertans. Premier, to date, how much money have you wasted because of this ill-informed lawsuit?
Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You want to talk ill-informed? Talk about bringing in an 11th hour behind-the-scenes end run clause and putting them to these agreements. Talk about ill-informed. Talk about Cabinet making decisions not to disclose that through the typical public process, which would enable members of the public and the media to be aware of decisions that may or may not have been made. Mr. Speaker, we're going to stand up for Albertans, and I'm proud to do so.
Well, that's interesting, because all those binders you bring into this House, you should be reading. Given that power companies are reeling at the idea of retroactive legislation, and given that the threat alone is driving electricity investor confidence to new lows, do you actually realize you need these investors to fulfill your plan of 30% by 2030? And how are you going to rebuild these partnerships that you've destroyed in just a year and a half?
Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to do my homework. I wish the member opposite would do his. Yeah. Instead of taking part of the profits that were very successful over the last several years and using that to offset current potential losses, instead the other sides of the PPAs want to pass those losses on to consumers. And Mr. Speaker, we can stand up for Albertans, or we can do what the members opposite are proposing, which is bury our head in the sand and pass more bills on to Albertans. I'm going to stand up for Albertans, Mr. Speaker, and I wish the members opposite would pretend they want to do so as well.
Second supplemental.
Well, I understand my role here, but you didn't understand the impacts of your ideological policies, and Albertans know you've been backpedaling from the start. And given now that you realize you're going to lose this court battle, you're just going to change the rules with retroactive legislation halfway through. Even a grade school child knows that this is wrong. It's clear you have no intention in following through on this costly legal battle. Will you tear up the right contract today, Joseph Hervé's contract, and send home your NDP lawyer?
Deputy Premier.
We are committed to taking action on climate change. The world is calling on all of us to do our fair share, and the members opposite want to pretend that we're still living in the 20th century. Well, Mr. Speaker, we're going to move forward in a thoughtful way to curb emissions, to provide secure electricity system to Albertans, and we will consider any tools required to do so. But, Mr. Speaker, we would, of course, like to work with partners, and that's why we're setting up fair, responsible ways of moving forward in greening our electricity system, instead of picking winners and losers like the third party did for decades, Mr. Speaker.